Okay, so let's call to order the March 31st, 2020 special meeting for the Tip City Board of Education, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay.
Ready?
Yeah, there we go.
Go ahead. I
Allegiance
To the flag
to the flag
To the flag
of the
of the United States of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic
for which it stands,
for which it stands,
one
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible.
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
Well, that was interesting.
That was weird. Okay, great. Dave Stevens, do you want to take roll call?
I sure will. Okay.
Awesome.
Mrs. Dunaway,
Here.
Mrs. Dahl,
here.
Mrs. Heatherly. Joellen is not on. I apologize. I missed her.
What time is it? Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
She's
Mrs. Zakor,
Here.
I do not see her in the waiting room. All right. Well,
if we start with the new business, hopefully she'll jump on. Maybe I know she has to drive home from work, I think. I don't know how long her commute is.
just give me one moment.
So while we're waiting, I'm just going to inquire. I mean, we see the board meeting room, but are you now able to switch over to actual your board document?
I think he's on the phone trying to call Joellen, so he might not be able to hear you.
Okay.
Give him a second, sorry. Oh, I think that's Joellen.
No, actually,
Someone got an email. Bummer.
So why does it say 8 participants?
There's 4 board members, Dr. Kumpf, Mr. Verhoff, Dave Stevens, and Liz. That's 8.
Oh, okay.
Oh, hey, that's you, Liz. So it should say 9 when we're all here.
I counted
Dr.
wrong.
Kumpf, I had to minimize my Zoom meeting and then open the board docs like separately next to it. I don't know how else
is
to
popping on.
Did you get a hold of her, Dave? Oh, great.
Here. Everybody looks fabulous.
There she
Oh.
is. And last but not least, Joellen Heatherly.
Okay, so we're done with attendance? Official?
Yep.
Okay, great.
Simon Patry's here.
Oh, Simon, I apologize. And Zakor.
Here.
Please forgive us, everyone. This is the first time we've done it.
Right. So did you call all 5 board members? It's official?
We're all here.
Okay, great. So moving on to new business. Is that Dr. Kumpf or is that Mr. Stevens? Who's handling the
Let's see.
member participation in meetings via electronic or telephonic means.
Okay. Greta, that would be you to do
So now just help me find out, I hit that little minimize, but help me get it back into board docs so that I actually have,
if you hit Alt Tab on your computer and hold down the Alt key while you click your Tab button, you can see all of the programs that you have open right now.
okay.
And if you tap the Tab key one at a time, you'll scroll through your windows.
All right. Well, how about, I don't want to accidentally schedule off here. Let me, I do have this piece here. So item A, approval of resolution allowing board member participation in meetings via electronic or telephonic means.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Thank you, Corinne and Teresa. Any discussion on this topic, everyone? I'll just note that we're passing this resolution just to make sure that currently our board policies state that we have to have meetings together and we need to all be in attendance for votes to count. However, during this time with the COVID-19 crisis, the legislature has allowed us to be able to use electronic and telephonic means to meet together to conduct the business of the school district. The policy that we're passing right now allows us to just waive sections of our current policy at this time. And this, I believe this is just a temporary measure. Let's see.
Correct.
I'll actually pull it up. I think there may be a,
Well, we've gotten several emails on this last week.
yeah, okay. It says that this cannot last past December 1st of 2020 within the resolution. So,
Wow, they took it that long. Okay.
okay,
If there's no further discussion, Dave, go ahead and call for a vote.
okay. Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes?
Heatherly,
Yes.
Patry,
Yes.
Zakor.
Yes.
Motion carries. Moving on to old business. Dr. Kump, is that you or me? Do you want to read that or do you want me to?
I can if you'd like.
Go ahead.
Approval to rescind March 16th, 2020 board action to continue to accept open enrollment students from adjacent school district for the 2020-2021 school year as per board policy 5113.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
Motioned and second. Dunaway and Dahl.
Heatherly and Dahl.
Oh, sorry about that. I thought it was,
Was that you, Teresa? Did you motion?
No, it was
Yeah.
me. It was Joe Ellen.
okay, doesn't
We're good.
matter. Just go ahead and call it back.
Any discussion on this or just go on through?
Well, I just wanted, the one discussion point was at the March 16th, 2020 meeting, we did not have votes from the full membership of the board on certain items. We had several important items on that agenda, and I believe it warrants a full vote by the entire board. Therefore, we recommend the board take action to rescind the actions and revote as a full board this evening.
And point of clarification, I guess without this passing, the legal effect of the vote that took place at the last meeting is that open enrollment continues as it has in previous years. Is that correct?
That would be with a clarification from our attorney that did some extended research on that about abstaining votes and how that fits into the picture. Yes.
Yeah, and I
But
just want to say that that was not Dave Stevens' fault. It was just calculated by board docs, and it's just one of those more obscure items that even board docs didn't know about.
Right, I think because it's probably not very often that there are 4 board members present versus 5. And then when the votes got put into the software that reads the Roberts Rules votes, it came out the way it did.
I
Is
would
that a
agree.
fair statement, Dave Stevens?
Yeah, I've learned much more about it since then. So Board Docs, when I contacted them, they currently have the software set up that it will look for a full board majority, which is a 3 out of 5 in our case. Anything that doesn't have 3 out of 5 yeses will automatically fail. However, according to the Ohio Revised Code, not all items being voted on require a full board approval or a full board majority of 3 votes or more. And so this is one of those instances, things that would require a full majority, the three votes would be the issuance of debt, the purchase or the sale of property, payroll items. All of our payroll items have to have 3 yes votes. And so this one, however, just requires a simple majority of the votes. And so what occurred at the last March 16th meeting, we had 2 yeses, 1 no, and an abstain. The abstention vote does not count as the number of votes cast. So we therefore had a vote of 2 yeses versus 1 no. The yeses have it, so that would have been a majority vote. So so that technically it did pass, although we did state in the meeting that it was a failure because that's how Board Docs was presenting it. However, we all know better now. And so in the future, we'll just have to tell Board Docs it's wrong when it tries to tell us something failed when we know it didn't. And so with that, are there any other questions concerning that issue that we could ask? Go ahead, Teresa.
Oh, not a question, but we did send the letters out too, correct? Dr. Hunt, when did those letters go out? The board meeting was on Monday. And when did those families receive, or when did we mail the letters? Wednesday? I don't even know.
It was a couple days later, but it was as expedient as we could under the circumstances of having the coronavirus and the transition of our schools to the home setting with remote. But yes, we did get those out rather expediently afterwards. And that was to alert parents so that they could be making arrangements and plans and make sure that if they needed to submit paperwork to other districts or even private school, that they would be able to get their names on a list. So that did occur. That doesn't mean that we couldn't send another letter out if other decisions were made, but that did go out to our parents because that was the action from that board as it had been interpreted at that time.
Sure, and I'm guessing, was it like 30 to 33 families approximately, something around there?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion, anyone? Okay.
Well, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I'm confused. We're voting to rescind. What are we doing? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
we're voting to rescind the action that the vote that was taken at the March 16th meeting.
The
And
incorrect vote, the
Yep.
incorrect.
so
okay.
that is completely off the books if this motion here passes, and
Mhm.
then we move forward.
And
It
then.
just voids that action.
Pardon?
It voids that action.
Yes, correct. That's correct, Joellen.
Thank
Just to
you.
clarify, it's not correcting an incorrect vote. It's undoing what was done,
Correct.
regardless
Yeah.
of where it's at. Yeah, okay.
Right. So kind of like
It's not
start a clean slate in a sense.
Hard,
Okay.
it's hard to understand. I understand. Yeah, it's complicated. We're rescinding something that, yeah, it's hard to explain and understand. Anyone else? Questions?
Mhm.
Go ahead, Dave,
Okay.
for a vote.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Patry,
No,
Zakor.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries.
All right, next item, approval to continue to accept open enrollment students from adjacent school districts in the 2021 school year as per Board Policy 5113.
Make a motion.
I'll second. Oh,
I'll get Simon on that one.
release Simon.
Okay. Any discussion?
No?
Well, I'd like to say a couple of things if I may. This is now where we're doing another vote on open enrollment, to continue it or to not.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure. I was really taken back at how many families have responded to the incorrectly announced discontinuation of open enrollment. And I was very impressed with the families who have open enrolled or are presently open enrolled, and saying that they never saw it as a guarantee, which is why some of the families took the initiative to move here, because they value the Tip City education so much. And that other families, upon this falsely announced, if you will, open enrollment, that they're in the process of moving, which really, it just really impressed me, their commitment to our schools and to wanting to stay a part of that school, the schools. And so I just wanted to say that, you know, that has really touched me, because I've heard a lot of people, you know, that maybe are open enrolled but haven't moved here, or from the families that don't have open enrolled kids, you know, and you hear the arguments back and forth, a lot of different directions. But I just wanted to say, the families that have open enrolled and are moving here or have moved here as a result, to guarantee their place, I thought was very telling of how much they value being a part of this community and the education. I think it makes a strong commitment to staying with the schools and the community. I'm finished.
We'll just add that since we are in such uncertain times and we don't know the future of what's going to happen with education, and that's really compounded since the time that we talked about this last, not knowing the outcome of the Ed Choice bill, and who knows where that's even going to go. Given that, I think exercising the option to keep open enrollment is the right thing to do for our district. I know that there can be parameters placed on the number of students that are openly enrolled, and that can all be controlled by the superintendent.
If it's okay, I have some questions, Madam President.
Sure.
I guess it's probably questions for the administration.
Okay.
The first question is if the open enrollment doesn't pass, how much do we lose as a school district in funding?
For those students that we receive funding for, contiguous open enrolled students, we receive $6,020 annually for that student. Currently, according to our foundation settlement report from the state of Ohio, that is a total of $395,000 for this school year at this time.
Go ahead, sorry.
I was just going to say, if a student were to say leave the district and go somewhere else, then their FTE, which is their full-time enrollment percentage, would go down, and we would not receive $6,20 for that student because they weren't here the whole year. So,
and the next question, I've got about 5. The next question is
Hang
that
on, Simon, do you mind if I comment on that, the 395,000? Because I found a website where it's basically breaks down the costs of what it is specific to Tip City, not just generically Ohio. And that says it cost $10,283.19 to educate a student in Tip City schools. So if you go off that math, we're not losing $395,000 because we would be losing $4,000 per student for every open enrolled student. So I like your question, Simon, because there's always been, I just always feel like the answer has never really been fully discussed. So.
I'm sorry, what's the source of this information?
Oh, it was, it's on.
is that the CUP report, Teresa?
The CUP report from 2019.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an overall average for what it costs to educate a student. if we were to end open enrollment and then make decreases in teacher levels and cut back on what we're spending, yes, you would see some savings, maybe not 395, but if we didn't make any changes to any of our education levels in staffing and what we're providing to the students, you would actually see the CUP report amount would increase because you're teaching less students for the same amount of money. So we'd have to actually make some cuts to make up for the loss of the revenue from the open enrollment money. So,
Or it could be presumed that students who live in the district are enrolled in the district. Right? It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that open enrolled students wouldn't be replaced with newly enrolled students who have moved into the district. That's the part of the equation that we can't really predict.
true, that's correct. If we had more students move in, that would replace revenue. However, due to the state share index that we currently have for Tip City, it's about 40%. All of our students should receive $6,020, but the state takes the wealth of our district and uses that against us. And so they say that our wealth index share is only 40%. So you take 6,020, multiply it by around 40%, and you're only looking at just a little over $2,000 for every student that lives in the district that comes from the state foundation funding. And where does the rest of the money come from? That comes from the property taxes of the businesses and the citizens that live here in Tip City.
Well, David, if I may follow up on that, and I don't mean to cut Joellen off, so she's not finished. I'll wait.
No, I'm done.
Okay.
I'm not, though. I had 5 questions.
But may I just follow up to Dave's comment about the other part of the equation that affects our overall income? It's my understanding, as it's reflected on the CUP report, is that it's also the amount of resident students living in Tip City that are not attending our schools for whatever reason. And just open enrollment alone, the CUP report, or excuse me, this was on the ODE Tip City report card, we had 51 students just in that category alone exiting our district. And with that goes dollars. And so my comment would be another part of this equation in balancing these numbers, kids coming in and kids coming out, is to ask ourselves, what can we do to keep the kids that live here, to retain them? What are their reasons for exiting? For example, is it bowling? You know, maybe this is an opportunity to look into why we're losing kids out of our district and how can we build a better service and product to retain them and those dollars.
Yeah, that's a good point, because 51 students leaving our district is,
And that's just in that one category. That does not account for the Peterson scholarships. That does not account for STEM. That's just, you know, open enrolling and going to a different place because there's other categories.
Okay. Simon, let's go back to you.
Yes.
So I have about 4 other questions. The second question I had is, right now we have a certain percentage or certain number of students that are open enrolled as a result of a contractual obligation that we have with our teachers. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then we have a certain number of students that are open enrolled as a result of outside the faculty or the staff or whatever the agreement we have. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And if we don't have open enrollment for adjacent school district, do we lose all funding for all the students, including the staff, or just the ones that are no longer coming?
That would also include the staff that have students attending that are outside our district.
And so we're losing about 400,000 roughly, give or take, not including any considerations to the CUP report, just as far as what we're not getting. And how many students are we talking about that are beyond what we're contractually obligated to provide our students?
So we're talking about
go ahead.
about 30 to 32. Yes.
So let's just say 32. So if I'm dividing 400,000 divided by 32, really those 30 students are giving us 12,500 each. Because if we don't have them, we lose all of it, correct?
Yes,
Correct.
And on top of that, then we're educating how many without any money coming in? For this,
getting 53.
yeah.
53 staff.
Yeah,
Okay, so about 33 over 12 grades. I know it's not a perfect distribution. Is that what we're looking at?
yes, it'd be over 13 grades, kindergarten.
And additionally, the school district, I guess, is expanding in that there's other homes coming into play.
Mhm.
So it's my understanding the administration looks at that in considering who it will allow for open enrollment depending on the grades and needs. And some of that kind of helps, I guess, supplement what we need to have ready for when those other houses are built. Is that correct?
That's correct. We want to make sure that we have classroom space capacity for those that are building and are part of our community, for sure. Yes.
And Dr. Kumpf, I guess, I know that you're no longer the superintendent, but based on that, if we were going to do open enrollment as a superintendent, would you anticipate suggesting that we reduce our teachers or keep them the same because the community is expanding?
Well, I would recommend that we maintain our teachers. One, because with the 53 students that will be here for this upcoming year, when you spread 30 or 32 students over 13 grade levels, you're not looking much more than 3 students per grade level. And so I know it's not an equal distribution, but it would not make a difference of whether you would or would not have a teacher fulfilling a position at a grade level. So just in light of that, I would see no need to reduce staff in light of our enrollment. But the other aspect would be that, yes, as we have housing grow, I do not see us reducing our staff at this time so that we would be able to provide, once again, the teacher ratio and the support for instruction that we've come to accustom that we value in our community.
And then I guess the last part's not a question, but my own personal feelings then to this issue is that I know a lot of the families that do open enroll, and I share Ann's statement related to that they are good families that are open enrolling. I think that they're providing an added benefit to the district and that it's helping allow our Tip City alum parents bring their kids back home to the school district, even though they may not be able to live in district, have to live maybe in Troy or just an adjacent school district. I think that the quality of students overall is beneficial to the school district, and they're obviously going here to invest in their education. And so I think because of the money and everything else, I think it's a good idea to continue open enrollment.
May I interject a
Hang on.
different? Okay.
Hang on for 1 second. Corinne has been trying to
Oh,
get,
sorry.
no, you're all right. You didn't know. I read the chat. Corinne, are you there?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat so that I didn't interrupt anybody kind of like, queuing up to ask a question. Thank you, Simon, for your questions. Those are really good and had a lot of clarification. I just have a little bit of further clarification. If we use the Cup Patterson as just an average, I know grade levels change, but if we just say on average, it cost us $10,000 to educate one student, allowing that there's difference amongst the grade levels because of the things that we offer in the high school look different than the things that we offer at the elementary and middle schools. But if we just say it's $10,000 a student and we receive $6,000 from the state for open enroll students, we have been running a deficit for each open enroll student every year. It's a $4,000 deficit that is subsidized by the taxpayers in Tip City. I have always been super supportive of open enrollment because I see it as a vote for Tip City schools. However, there have been a very active attack on this school board for a vote that it is what it is. And to see the other members that I serve on this board with attacked on social media was heartbreaking for me, because I know each and every one of us around, well, I wasn't gonna say around this table, but around this town now, we care about our students and we care about our staff, and we don't make any vote lightly. And I was just horrified at what I saw taking place on social media, especially during a a national crisis where people are on edge and they're worried about their jobs and their families. And then to have us get attacked where, again, I just think we're a super awesome group of people that we don't always agree. But I know that each of us here are trying to do what we think is right for our community, even if it's not all same-minded. I like I said, I was just totally horrified. But there is this, to call this a money issue, to say that we're going to lose money if we end open enrollment. We've been losing money since the beginning of open enrollment. And that is a fact, because every student that comes doesn't pay for themselves. Our taxpayers subsidize that. And way back when my mom first came here, TIP did not pay as much as the surrounding school districts, but allowing teachers to bring their students here was kind of like a perk, But now that our teachers' pay is pretty much on par with everybody around us, and then to get attacked for a vote, I was, like I said, I was just appalled, because our taxpayers and our community is subsidizing open enrollment for every student. They don't pay for their own seat. It's a $4,000 subsidy. That's my comment.
And follow-up question to your statement, Corinne. When you say it's a $4,000 subsidy, are you including the open enrolled student that we're contractually obligated to allow to open enroll?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so then if we were only, so really what we're doing is then we'd still be subsidizing those individuals
For a year.
And if we added 33 though, and that's a $12,000 swing, we're really mitigating ourselves a certain extent on the money side with allowing adjacent students, correct?
I mean, I don't really know how you, if you're trying to quantify this into a money thing, if we can stem some of our losses, maybe we can stem some of our losses, but I think that trying to make this a money vote is the wrong vote to have.
Well, one thing is to Simon's bringing up the money. And if we do have, according to the CUP report, 51 students leaving, I've always suggested that we do exit interviews with families. Just, hey, what made you want to go to Troy Christian, or what made you want to go to CJ, or, why did you go to Vandalia? If we have exit interviews with these families that come to us and say we're no longer going to Tip City schools, then we will know, is it academic? Is it bullying? What is the reason? And then keep in mind, those families still live here. They're still Tip City voters. We're trying to build a $49 million school, and we have 51 families who are sending their kids to other districts, but they're still our community. So it's important to get that information from them, because maybe those students could come back. And the other thing is, if we are building a $49 million school, which is what we currently have, planned, I don't feel like it's right to raise the taxes for our seniors when we have 83 kids coming here under open enrollment. I feel like that's just a hard thing for me to do to a senior who is doing their best just to, get the basic bills paid. I just don't feel like that's right. I feel like if you want to come to Tip City schools, live in Tip City. It's very simple. Tip City schools, live in Tip City. I mean, that's easy math.
I think that if we, to kind of address a couple of things there, is I don't think it's all about the money. I think the money is certainly a consideration, but just to, it sounds to me like what you're suggesting, Teresa, is we get rid of open enrollment, and when we get to negotiating with the teachers, that is no longer a benefit of the contract. If we don't
I didn't say that, Simon. I said, if you want to, we're talking about these 33 kids that receive letters approximately on March 18th or March 19th, those families who have been open enrolled. And many of those people, I even called one family on the phone and she said, hey, I appreciate it. We knew when we came here that this could end at any time. They were very gracious. We were on the phone for 34 minutes. I mean, she said she knew this was a year-to-year decision. So I have no idea, Simon. I'm not a psychic. I can't read into the future. I have no idea what's going to happen with negotiations. None of us do.
So when you said, what did you say 33 or 83 students earlier when you were talking?
Simon, there's 83 total, but the staff kids, as you asked earlier, that was your first question, I believe, they get to stay here for another year. Dr. Kampf answered your question. So
Well, I
we-
know, but what I'm saying is that I was trying to address your comment. You said
Go ahead.
83 students. You don't
Total.
think to have open enrollment for 83 students, that to me says we're looking into the future. And if we're looking at it in that way, I think that we're going to have a severe consequence related to losing some really good quality teachers. Over the years, we've had some great teachers here who have had their kids open enroll and participate in school district. And I think that we need to think about that, is that if we're going to, I think that has to be considered now. If we're going to continue doing that, which I think is a great idea, because we want to lose these good teachers, then we need to think about the fact that then we're losing money that we otherwise would get. And that price doesn't make sense to me at that point, that we lose $400,000 for 33 students, even if we're losing money per student.
4,000, according to the CUP report.
Even if we're losing any money to this, if we're going to want to maintain the quality of teachers we have, who may be here because they're allowed to open enrollment, if not, they may go to another school district, then I think that we need to think about that, because it's allowing the extra 33 or 3 per class is helping us subsidize the subsidy.
So let's, oh, sorry, go ahead.
May I say something?
Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut Simon off. Go ahead, Ann. You've been waiting.
Yes, I have a question and then I have 2 follow-ups, but I would like to respond to Simon's comment, because the implication that unless we allow open enrollment for teachers, therefore we're not going to have good teachers in our district, is something that I just can't readily buy into. It's kind of supposition at this point, because there's a lot of schools. You look at Centerville, Oakwood, they don't have open enrollment. Now, granted, I don't know what they have worked out with their teachers, but I'd like to believe that good teachers will, that it's not just because their child is here, it's because they're really committed to the Tip City schools. They like the culture. I don't think it's just, predicated solely on their child attending, because a lot of times the children, have graduated and moved on. They're still continuing in Tip schools. But my question is, and then I want to follow up with 2, I think, very important comments to all this. We got the financial component. Okay, we don't have the financial component. But one of the finances we're not talking about is CCP classes. And if we have open enrolled students participating in our CCP classes, who pays for that college credit? Does anyone know?
The taxpayers pay for it, Ann.
The Tip City taxpayers.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we're not talking about that financial part of this component. And not all schools offer CCP. And if I understand correctly, not all high schools offer CCP, which may be another reason why some kids want to come here. And
I think
if
that's true.
I think they all have to now.
they all do,
Yes, isn't that right, Mr. Stevens?
I believe so.
Yes.
You were ahead of the curve, though. That is true. And what's
but
going,
even if it is, I don't know.
If
that
I could,
Yes.
if
go
I could
ahead.
interject there, yes,
Okay.
it is a state mandate that we offer CCP classes. So all school districts across the state have to offer CCP.
Okay, is it a state mandate that they all have to offer the same extent of CCP classes?
Yes,
I think if they want to attend a school,
Mhm.
they can go.
So you're saying, Steve, that every high school would have the CCP English or the CCP, they have to offer the same subject matters for CCP?
you don't have to offer it within your building, but you have to allow students to participate in College Credit Plus, whether they're doing that in your building or off campus or online.
And we offer it in our buildings and off campus.
Mhm.
We have a blend between online, on Sinclair's campus, on Edison's campus, and we are incorporating more on our campus to try and keep
Could
students
be a
in our
draw.
buildings.
That could be an extra draw why they want to be here. But more importantly to me, I mean, that's just, when you start teasing out all this financial data, it can get very, broad. But I would like to say that, first of all, there's no grandfathering clause, to my knowledge, with open enrollment. The legislation the legislation wrote only 3 options for boards to consider. No open enrollment for adjacent districts, open enrollment for all districts in Ohio. And so to the community, there's a great misunderstanding because it's heartbreaking if a child's been in school for so long and then they just abruptly, but we don't have the option as a board to allow a grandfathering. It's not an available option. And with that said, it's a hard, abrupt cutoff if you go to no more open enrollment. But at some point, I think if we're going to talk about the dollars, we also have to talk about, instead of swapping kids in and swapping kids out, people that move to our community are here longer term. And even when their child graduates from our district, they're still here and they're still paying tax dollars to the Tip City schools. So I think that's a really important concept that nobody's talking about, because it's like, you know, you're here for life. I know that's an exaggeration, but when you're in the community, your children are here in the community, even when they leave our community for whatever reason, college, marriage, employment, the parents are still here for the most part, and they're still paying their dollars. So I see it more as a long-term commitment and investment to our schools and our community by encouraging them to come and root down in our community.
Corinne?
And kind of to piggyback on that, I was,
Sure.
of course, I was speaking to a lot of people too. This was a very hot topic. And somebody mentioned to me that if you look back over the open enrollment data, there were years when we had 153, 147 open enroll students.
That's right.
What would that have looked like to our taxpayers who were trying to sell a house if we would have had people looking to buy? What would that have done to our home values? Because another consideration for us as elected officials is protecting our community. And part of open enrollment is protecting our home values as well. And, you know, I'm not saying that it would have driven the home market through the roof, but those were some tough years buying and selling homes. Maybe it would have helped our community. Somebody mentioned that to me, and I thought that was a really smart, insightful thing to comment on.
So Simon, I'm going to look at this from another angle, because when we had the work session, this question came up, and then you accused me of making inflammatory comments, which I absolutely understand where you would have thought that. So then I followed up with an email to the entire Board of Education, because I wanted to clarify on that. Because like I said, I definitely without the background, I can completely understand where you would have thought my comments were inflammatory. So I give you the benefit of the doubt on that. But let's just talk about this from climate and culture and an equity standpoint. If you are a parent who has to, let's just say you're a Tip City teacher, and you have to get up early, you've got 3 kids, you have to get them to the daycare. And a lot of these, I don't know what time, let's just say 7:30. You have to be in your classroom by 7:30. Your daycare doesn't open till 7. So you're dropping your kids off at the daycare at 7 o'clock, and then you have to be at your school building at 7:30. That's not a big, a leeway. The teachers who have open enrollment get to bring their kids to school with them, drop them off at LT Ball in the morning, where they hang out in the library with Ann Rose. She entertains them, reads to them, has little things for them to do, whatever. Then they get on Ann takes them to the designated spot at LT Ball, where the child gets on the appropriate bus and then goes to their building. So that is what we do for our open enrolled staff members of kids who come here. How is that fair to the teacher who lives here? And she takes her kids to the daycare, but her kids aren't open enrolled because she lives in Tip City. And if we're saying there's 53 staff kids, let's just assumptively say each person has 2 kids. So that's 25 teachers. So this is a, quote, I'll just say perk for 25 teachers. But if you're not a teacher that has an open enrolled kid here, you're not getting the child daycare before and after school and the free busing, how does that make them feel? You know what I'm saying? Because you asked me earlier about the open enrolled with the negotiations, which I have no comment on that, because nobody knows what's going to happen. So instead of looking at it from a financial standpoint, look at it from a climate and culture. I can't believe that the teachers who have to get up early to get their kids to daycare feel good about the people who aren't even paying taxes in Tip City, who get to bring their kid before and after school at no cost. Ann Rose is paid with Tip City taxpayer money. And she's being paid to entertain these kids who don't live here and don't pay taxes here. To me, that's a climate and culture and an equity issue.
Well, another climate and culture equity issue is our sports teams. You know, when we have limited spots on certain sports teams, I heard one story, and this was a family that had several generations in Tip, and good player, but didn't make a spot on a sports team, and an open enrolled student did. And I just sort of, you know, I wrestle with that. I mean, sports are great. Of course, we want the good athletes, best, but at the same time, sports is bigger than just who's the best. And, you know, it should be to a good qualified student to get bumped for no other reason than maybe, I don't know, athletic, or, you know, I don't even want to say in club favoritism. I want to avoid that. That for me, that's a problem for people that have lived here and paying the taxes.
I've had several parents come to me and say, it's not fair that I live here and pay taxes here and some open enrolled kid takes up my son's varsity spot. In 5 years, I've had lots of people reach out to me. So I can say, Ann, I've also heard that.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for it.
And
When
I just say, it's open enrollment. I can't do anything about it. Right.
Then I don't feel good about it.
I think those are unique examples, and I'm not denying that, because I don't know if they're happening or not. I have no comment on that. Open enrollment to me is a tool, and it's a way to balance out our classes using the resources that we have. And I would hate to see us lose that tool in this community. This is an option, and it's a way to balance out what we have. It lets you increase the class to an average size or decrease, you know, obviously it doesn't decrease, but so to me, backfilling with students where you have a deficit is a good thing. It's a good tool to have. It doesn't mean it has to be exercised. There is discretion on how many people that you open enroll, and that to me has not been an issue in the past.
Well, I think it hasn't been an issue in the past, Joellen, with all candor, which is one reason I wanted to get on the board. And it wasn't for open enrollment. I'm just learning as I go with all these issues. But the reason I think maybe it wasn't an issue in the past is because this is a very sensitive subject. And I don't know that the boards in the past have been willing to open up this dialogue and really review it from both sides.
Well, yeah, look what happened to me over the last 7 days. I mean, nobody wants to be attacked on.
So just because something wasn't reviewed, in my opinion, doesn't mean, you know, it ain't broken, don't fix it. I think it wasn't reviewed because it's a touchy subject.
It is.
And this is a new board that's willing to dive into these conversations and have them.
I'd like to add a few comments. One, I'd like to say first that it was extremely unfortunate for our board president to be placed in a position where on social media that there were unkind statements and things that were said that were extremely hurtful and made for a difficult situation for her and her family as they were sorting through that. And I think in general, whatever the issue is, you know, I request our community to, if you have questions, call and talk with someone or ask to conference with someone, have true dialogue about something. That's the way we handle things and work through things. Second, I want to say that open enrollment, particularly in the last few years, I think it has been, it's been handled in an aspect where we have looked at what our numbers are at each grade level and what is our capacity, and that we do not extend what we don't think is available space. I work diligently with the principals to see what space is still available at that grade level. And ultimately, I understand that we can have figures about what we get for our state funding, what someone that's open enrolled is able to bring to our district, and then also what a CUP report says. But when a CUP report looks at it, it looks at all students, all needs, all supports. And so, not to say that, you know, as we get open enrolled students, of course, we're going to be taking care of them. But I think we have to look at that in a larger aspect about it's all costs that are put in there. And the aspect that certainly when we look, if we only have one open spot, that's all we put in. And if we have classes, and right now we don't because we're filling in, but if we have classes that would happen to be smaller, we are able to, we're still going to have the lights on, we're still going to have the cost of the furniture, all those kind of things are there, you know, our electricity, that those costs are set. And even our staff, if we have a staff member and they have 20 instead of 22 students in a classroom, we could have the additional 2. I know we don't really cut it quite that close because we never know when we're going to have a move in or when, once again, with our building, but I do think that we can look at grade level by grade level and determine if there is space for students. I also think when we talk about the bigger picture, and I understand what Mrs. Zakor is saying about, you know, boards that are willing to look at tough issues and take a stance and make a decision. And that's strong. That's strong when a board's willing to do that. But I do think about, we talk a great deal about mental and health wellness. And I think that for the families right now that are the 30, because we already know the 53 are coming, the 30 students, that for those families, this is a very stressful piece. And that's one of the reasons we did get those letters out quickly, because we need to have them to have time to think about what will be their solution to this problem. But I do know, I have of late now had several people reach out, and they are very concerned, and they do have that several of them are in the upper levels, and they just want so badly for them to be able to finish here. They have been here since kindergarten or second grade, and this is all they know. This is their school. This is their school district. And I know we can say, move here, and I moved here. That was important to me. If I was going to be an administrator here and have a leadership role, I wanted to be part of this community and be here. But I know that for some families, there's other things that play into it. Maybe both spouses, maybe a husband and wife, that maybe TIP is the middle point and they're both coming from different directions and they're both traveling to their jobs. I mean, each household has its own circumstance. So I just think it is a complex issue, a very complex issue.
Right. I just wanted to clarify something, Dr. Kumpf. I wasn't implying that all 53 staff members, you know, bring their kids here every single morning. How many kids get dropped off at LT Ball in the mornings? Is it 10, 20? Do you have any idea what that number is? With Ann Rose and
I would say in the area of 8 to 10. What I will say is I know
did not
that it's been I'm sorry, I don't want to talk on top of you.
Go ahead.
I know that the example that you give, that you had shared something similar to this in the past. And I want to be honest in that I think that this had been something that did occur. I know that after the last time it came up, I went directly to Mr. Vagatus and asked, because I had asked particularly, I said this school year that this cannot be a continued practice, even out of the goodness of Mrs. Rose's heart. It cannot.
I'm not blaming her. She's a sweetheart. I mean, she
is. And that's why it comes easy for her. But he, once again, indicated to me he had no teacher in his building that had complained of a concern about it. And he also said that he did not observe that occurring, and that students were staying with their parent more in their classroom. So I did follow up after the last time we had this conversation.
Right, but so I just wanted to make it, I wasn't saying that there's 53 kids running around LT Ball. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, a lot of teachers, you know, they have their own daycare, and
Sure.
But my point was, to the teachers who aren't doing it, it seems like an unfair perk. And, you know, and it is a problem, because I've had parents come to me and say, why do the teachers bring their kids to school? They're running around the building, they're in the hallways, they're loud, they're disruptive. You know, and I'm not, even if it's one kid doing that, they just basically ruined it for everybody, so to speak, right?
Yes, and once again.
And it's a liability. It's a liability for the school, because if those students aren't supposed to be in there, that becomes a liability, a district liability.
So I guess there's two things. One, I feel like this vote is going to be on the 32 students, because the 53 are in for the year. And
Correct.
the other piece is that I have gone to the principals directly, and not just to Mr. Vagatus. You know, I went to Mrs. Smith. I meant to different ones that I know that they have children of that age that do come with them. And they said that they had been very explicit and that they saw no problems in their buildings for this school year. So,
Right, but no teacher is going to go tattle on another teacher. I mean, right? They're not going to do that. They're going to go to a parent. You know how it works. They're
yeah,
going
they need to go to the
to
principal,
go to a parent. but
or
they're
they
not-
need to come to me. So, yeah.
I'd
Okay.
just like to say a few things. The first is I do find the attacks on President Dunaway to be distasteful, and I said so on Facebook, and I made sure to reflect that I don't reflect the opinion of the board, and this is only my opinion, but I felt that their characterizations of President Dunaway were unfair and inappropriate. And I think that that's important for the community to understand, is that just because I don't agree with President Dunaway or other members of the board on certain issues does not mean that I don't respect them and respect their opinion. And I think that I would also encourage and dovetail the comments made that people should be making statements appropriately with professionalism and courtesy. I think that the comments made, obviously inappropriate, show how emotionally charged this can be for some people. And I know that we had a few bad players here, but I also think that we should think about that, is that we shouldn't let 2 or 3 people, or whoever the number was, reflect upon the others who didn't make those comments and exercise polite conversation to relay that they felt this was important to them. And I did have a few families. One member, I've texted them and asked them for permission to reveal their name here. But this individual has a child that attends an open enrollment. I know her and her family very well. Her father is from Tip City. She's from Tip City. They have a lot of family in Tip City. She works in Tip City. They reside just outside of Tip City. She's extremely active in community organizations. One of the organizations has provided scholarships to the school district. And her son, I know personally, is an outstanding child, provides a benefit. I understand that there's arguments that can be made related to losing spots on teams and things like that, but I think we also need to consider the fact that sometimes we'll need students to come into classes that may not have as many students. This allows us to subsidize that cost, and we may be losing money overall, but I think it's a good thing, especially if those students are bringing in good students that have higher academics, et cetera, in that they help elevate all of us and elevate the school district as a whole. I think that it's very important to remember that while it may cost more overall when you consider the 83 students to have them here, that we are, for better or for worse, we're stuck with a contract, or we have a contract, depending on your view, that provides that 50 or so students are coming regardless. If we vote no today, we still have that 50, and now we lose $400,000 to avoid having 3 students this year, roughly, per grade.
You meant 30.
Well, 3 per grade, roughly.
Oh, sorry about that. Go
10 or
ahead.
12 or whatever you want to say. So I think that a lot of comments are made related to the financial side, need to be fleshed out, need to be observed. I think that a lot of things that were said today kind of made me think about things a little differently as it relates to the cost per student, the CUP report, et cetera, which I have not had a chance to review. But it doesn't change my vote today, because regardless of that, we are still having 50 plus students that we're going to be paying for Now we don't even have the subsidy of $400,000. I think that it's my feeling that we'd be better off doing open enrollment this year and then re-examining it as a whole next year on the financial side. But
I have one final comment on that, Simon.
regardless of the financial side, I feel that we have a lot of great students that are in open enrollment, a lot of good families. I know of at least two that I'm personally friends with their parents and have met their children and didn't realize they were open enrollment until some of them until this happened. Some of them I knew, but I think we're going to be losing some good quality families. And I'd urge us to think about that.
Simon, one thing that I've brought up, I seem to bring it up every year. I did not bring it up this year, shame on me. But I always look at this, you know, for instance, one year we added the 9th pod for kindergarten because we had a big kindergarten enrollment. That's fine. I think it was last year we added a 9th pod for the 4th grade teacher because we had a big enrollment in 4th grade. And that's the right thing to do, right? We're in Tip City, we value the class sizes. However, when you get into middle school, this is my big problem. You know, that we handled kindergarten, we handled 4th grade, but then what does that look like at the middle school level? What does that look like at the high school level? And one thing that really concerned me was we had 31 kids in an algebra class. 31 kids in an algebra class is way too many kids. And it happened to be one of our biggest, and it actually still is, one of our biggest class sizes. So it's great to take care of it in the kindergarten, you know, level, in the 4th grade level, but what are we doing to help those 31 kids who all had to be taught algebra? I'm not
Question.
sure, but I
Dr. Kumpf,
go ahead.
were there any open enrolled students in those big classes?
Yeah, that's my point. Yes, that's my point. And they still are. It's this year's sophomore class is the class that I'm speaking of specifically. So I just felt bad for the kids who live here and pay taxes here, right? Because we value those small classrooms in Tip City, say 21 students, but yet we put 31 kids in an algebra classroom. That's just really unacceptable to me. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
I'm sorry, we
ahead.
added math position to the high school to address that need.
No, that was a remedial math thing, Joellen.
Well, to address issues.
The catch-up year.
To address issues in math, we added a position to the table of organization because we had a number of factors and made an academic decision about adding staff to the high school in math for that reason. Not just a large class size. There were a number of factors that were considered that I recall.
So that makes my point even more valid. So the reason why we had to add that catch-up year of math at the high school was because we had the 31 kids in algebra. Those 31 kids who had algebra were getting the full experience that they should have been receiving had they been in a classroom with 21 kids. So yes, we did add that kind of, call it, I don't even know what, Mr. Verhoff's on here, he could maybe help, but I forget what we called that teacher that we added to that level. So that makes my point even more valid. We should never have 31 kids in an algebra classroom. It makes no sense. I'm not a teacher, but
Right, but I'll
in that
interject.
classroom.
When we look at the open enrollment, and I'm pulling out a sheet that had been provided as a handout at one time, that it does show, I believe that the sophomore group is 220 students. That is a larger class.
That's the class I'm talking about. 31 algebra kids have.
But we have 7 students that are open enrolled in that. So, I mean, once again, that reduces it some, but it does not solve a 31 student in an algebra class. A lot of that scheduling, a lot of it's what they call special situations where they're in band and they may be in choir, or they're in, maybe they're in certain AP courses, and however that falls, that then a certain grouping. Now, an algebra class, they're not going to be in some of the more advanced AP courses that same student may or may not be. I don't know what it is, but it is an element of the scheduling. And it sounds like more absolutely could and should be done with that, because in TIP, we do not prefer having larger classes, because we know that the student teacher ratio does make a difference in the quality of the education and the support they're able to receive when they are learning.
And so, Dr. Kumpf, with that 31 student algebra class, do we have any idea how many of those were open enrolled of the 7 that would have been added?
Absolutely not. I mean, it's not
I
something
think
that
3
couldn't
years
be done.
ago, yeah.
It couldn't be done. I mean, that it could be done by drilling down to that class, looking and see exactly which section that was, and then looking back at open enrollment without knowing who the teacher is, what class, and that sort of thing. I mean, that can be done and can be brought to the board. Even it could be generically placed in a Friday board update for this Friday if that's important and you'd like.
It was 3 years ago. We don't need the information. Don't waste your time. It was 3 years ago. I mean,
Well, I mean, I think if we're using that as a reason why we shouldn't have, it's important to understand that, because I guess the way I understood on open enrollment, Dr. Coughlin, correct me if I'm wrong, is that one of the primary reasons to have it is that your class sizes will go up and down depending on the district. Sometimes you have more 3rd graders than 2nd graders. Sometimes that size will require that you have an additional teacher to keep up with that class. And so then you either have a temporary teacher, you'd be laying people off and back on. And so the open enrollment then allows you to then maintain continuity, institutional memory, et cetera, processes, the quality of education, and then allows us to then get some money for that when we have classes that are smaller. Is that the way that's supposed to be done?
That would be correct. It does allow us to have the continuity with our staff, that if a particular grade level is running 15 students less than what we usually try to stay very close to the 200 mark. And if one would be below that by a dozen students, whatever the number might be, then we would really look at, and certainly it depends on who applies. I'll have to say our 2nd grade class is one of our smaller classes that's coming through. And interesting enough, we did not have very many applications at all. And that's just how that happened. We would have been able this last year to have approved some more in 2nd grade because we do have the space, but we
so
do not have the applications.
And so if you had a class that was higher in number, you still have the discretion to say, well, we're not going to accept any open enrollment students for this class because it's too big.
That's absolutely correct.
And nobody gets grandfathered in. So just because, let's say we have a big influx of sophomores because of a housing development for some reason, if you were a freshman coming to the sophomore class as an open enrolled student, you wouldn't be automatically grandfathered in. If we had the needs of the community exceeded those or exceeded the spaces that we have available to keep the classroom size the way we like for open enrollment, would we accept open enrollment and grandfather them or just reject them?
Well, I hear what you're saying, and in the upper grades, you're right, at any grade, if our local enrollment came to the capacity, we definitely would look at that and we would have to decline and say no, because it is a year by year. I will qualify that though, that those will be very, very hard decisions. They are for each and every student because them and their family, they want to be here. But as students, if they've been here since kindergarten or 2nd grade, and now they're a junior and the number happens for one reason or another, we've had houses being built, and maybe we had 8 of those families had a junior. So, we've already got an increase in a number of that size. It would be a very heartfelt decision to decide whether a junior could not finish their last 2 years because we'd be up a bit.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll have to say is when you get into, I know that we were talking about, like, for example, in algebra class, that we don't want the numbers to be so high. We want it to be a good instructional size. But
Right.
we have classes in both the middle school and the high school that sometimes when you have a number that's slightly over 200, because the way it's divided out, you still may not have classes that are exceeding the level that we are comfortable with. Now, the one that she spoke of, that would truly be an exception and not a best practice in our terms. So I'll be very truthful with you. For someone that would be an upperclassman, we absolutely would have every right to tell them no. Will that be an easy decision? No, but we would have every right to do that because it is a year by year application and approval process.
So, so in that regard, you're effectuating no open enrollment and no grandfathering, which is what kind of where I'm going with all this, Dr. Kump, and thank you, because I didn't even think about that aspect, and it's really key. In my summary of where I'm standing, I read the Fordham report. I think Corinne forwarded that. That was awesome, because open enrollment started out to help children in the Super 8 districts of Ohio, Cincinnati, Cleveland,
Yeah.
Columbus, Akron, Youngstown, Canton, Toledo, the kids that were being left behind for whatever reason in their educational advancement. It was designed to allow those kids to go out to the burbs a little bit more and get maybe a greater opportunity. Then what happened over time, it became a numbers game. It started to become swapping. My X number of children leave from my district, so we're going to bring X number of children in from your district. And don't forget, the kids that come here, they're sucking dollars out of the district they're coming from. So if we're having kids from Troy, Troy's losing that money. They're our neighbors. If they're coming from Bethel or Vandalia, they're losing that number. They're our neighbors. It's a swapping game. And the Fordham report was very revealing to me, because there were some, I thought it was I thought they tried to make it as objective. And what stood out to me the most, particularly for these kids that are struggling, not in TIP, but in the other areas of Ohio, the grades didn't really advance that much. The performance didn't really advance that much. And we forget to talk about the academic performance. So my conclusion on this is I don't think swapping numbers is the way to go. And by the way, those bigger districts, you're talking about 600 and 700 kids open enrolled to crunch the numbers and bring the dollars in for those districts. We're not talking about 83 numbers. Some of those districts are talking about 300 open enrolled, 500 open enrolled. So I don't like this concept of swapping back and forth. I'd rather strive for best practice that retains the kids that we have. And I would rather encourage people to move into our community, invest in the long term, invest in the housing, invest in our local businesses, and maybe help eliminate some of this depth in metric analysis of who's coming and who's going, because administrative time is money. And that's kind of how I'm concluding I really looked at this from a lot of angles. That's my conclusion.
Can I make a motion to vote?
I was just going to say, are we ready?
I am
Second.
ready to
I'll
vote.
second.
I second that, Corinne.
Motion and seconded, Dahl and Zakor. Dave Stevens, if you're still on. Hopefully you are.
Poor Dave.
I think we lost him. We officially lost him first time.
No, I'm trying to unmute myself.
Oh,
Dahl, Zakor.
So we already had.
No, the motion is Heatherly and Patry.
Okay, gotcha. We're good. Back on track. Does
right.
anybody else have anything to say before we vote?
No.
Okay. Let's vote, Dave.
All right. Heatherly,
Yes.
Patry,
Yes.
Dahl,
No.
Dunaway,
No.
Zakor.
No.
Motion fails. Item C, Dr. Kumpf.
All righty, our next item is Lean Six Sigma, rescinding that as well. Approval to rescind March 16th, 2020 board agenda to contract with Lean Six Sigma to attain the Yellow Belt, Green Belt, and Train the Trainer certification for Tip City schools as per the agenda.
I'll make a motion to rescind the vote.
I'll second.
Dahl and, Heatherly and Dahl. Motion in second. Any comments? Any discussion? Ready for a vote?
Heatherly,
Yes.
Dahl,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Patry,
No.
Zakor.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, so we do not have another resolution on this. It's just some discussion that could be brought forward if anyone would like to at this time.
Greta, I'll go ahead and state that, so the Lean Six Sigma contract, we reached out to, what's his name again?
Seth Hummel?
Yes, Seth Hummel.
Okay.
We reached out to Mr. Hummel and talked to him about the dates because of the current situation that we're in at the moment. Not really doing much except sitting in rooms, but we reached out to Mr. Hummel and he did state that he would revise the required due dates for payments. And so the contract, if we were to come back with the Lean Six Sigma, the dates that you see in the original contract state that the first payment would start as soon as this contract is signed. And then the second payment would be due on August 1st of 2021 of $10,000. And then the $3,000 would start. But now we've got those pushed back so that the first payment wouldn't start until the next fiscal year. And so all we're doing is just spreading out the timing of the payments because the training costs $20,000. The supplies, when the students start taking those classes, are $3,000 a year. So that's just the only change that we have.
So I'll interject that I know one of the comments, or as I recall, that thought about giving it more time and not to rush the training. But the training that was set up is how that they are doing that with area districts for the trainer when they're not doing entire staffs. They're just doing the grouping that will be working with the students and then some support staff knowledge and some of the administration with that. But in our situation, I want to say that with the change of contract and also with the coronavirus and the need for them to cancel some of their training sessions that were really projected for April and May, they are now saying that they would like the contract to really be projected and bumped up, that we would not truly implement until 2021 would be when the real implementation with our students would occur. And am I correct in that, Mr. Stevens? Oh, he is muted.
He's on mute.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just do a thumbs up. You don't have to.
Okay.
But then I wouldn't be online.
Oh,
So,
sure. Thumbs up.
in light of this, there is a thought to once again put this on the agenda for the April meeting with that new contract. The contract arrived, but it was like 10 o'clock today,
Understood.
a.m. And so the attachment we have is not the newest contract.
Oh.
So go ahead, Ian. I didn't.
The one we're looking at right now, Dr. Kump, on the,
I think that's correct, isn't it? That we did, yes,
that's
not,
not the,
not our newest one.
oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you for clarifying
The
that.
date changes.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Mhm.
So with everything that we have going on right now with the coronavirus, we're not sure when fall sports are going to start. You know, there's so many unknowns right now. In your opinion, is this the right time to be throwing Lean Six Sigma into, everything else that we're going to be dealing with? I don't know.
May I comment on that, Mrs.
Well,
Dunlap?
I was asking Dr. Kumpf, but
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'll comment that I do think with it being projected out, the 21-22 school year, I think that we should be in a recovery mode as a nation and be looking, to kind of get back into our pace and our step. I think that gives us enough time. I think that was really kind of a great thought process and forward thinking on Lean Six Sigma team themselves of really talking with us and suggesting that that's, at this point, that's a need they have because they know they cannot conduct the training on the given time. So I would still very much advocate for us to move forward on that. I think it would be a positive piece in addition to our district. And I don't think that we should not be feeling rushed about it because it has been extended out now. I know it does make it difficult when we're not in session right now, but the training has been pushed back. So that's how the whole timeline, is pushed out a bit.
Just a formality. We didn't make a motion to open the discussion on this. We just.
This is
voted
just a
to-
discussion item.
So we're not voting on this.
No,
Okay. Thank
not
you.
unless somebody says something.
We're not voting on Lean Six Sigma.
No,
Okay,
not this evening.
but we did cancel or we did rescind the previous vote from the 16th. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Dr. Comp suggested.
So as Dr. Kump says, we're starting on a clean slate again. Is that correct?
That's right. And we'll,
Okay, thank you.
and I'm anticipating that would be on the April meeting once again, but if I receive other feedback, that will be, I'll be open to that as well. But at this time, we are just on a clean slate, but we do have
Okay.
an updated contract that would be available. If you have questions, you could pose those to either Mr. Veerhoff or myself, and we could get the information for you that could be pushed out on Friday board update before our April meeting. And then hopefully people could feel like they can make an informed decision for it actually to be active in our schools the year 21-22.
May I comment at this point?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Since we just now have learned that schools are not going to be reopening until perhaps not until May 1st, if then.
Right.
I guess I'm even wondering why put it on April? Maybe because I attended that webinar with Bricker and Eckler, and oh my gosh, the issues that the schools are dealing with now. I mean, wow, from teacher evaluations, administrator evaluations, special education services, credit hours, graduation, what's that, where are we gonna put the marker in terms of graduate? I heard the comments, up through when the time school closed. Then the list was long, and you recapped all that actually, Dr. Kump. And I mean, what I'm reading when I went on to other sites, it seems like the theme is, this is not the time for bells and whistles. Don't reinvent the wheel. Keep things simple, because we're not even in recovery yet. We're still in life-sustaining mode. And then after that is going to become the recovery mode. We don't really know when that recovery mode is going to even start. So
I agree with Dan on this. I feel that we probably need to table this contract, especially given that there's not an urgency related to a timing issue. If it's not going to be for the 21 to 22 school year, there's no real reason to push forward with a contractual obligation. I think we just table it till a few months later when we get a better sense of what's happening.
I would concur with that, Mr. Patry.
I would be fine with that.
Okay. I can let Mr. Hummel know. Also, we just have to be aware, he will contact Piqua schools, because we do have this combined training, which is part of the reason that we do have a reduction in our cost or our fee. But that would just be some information. And we just have to he will work with us to make Piqua aware, because I think that they have moved forward and made the commitment there. So that's an additional piece, but until our board approves it, we won't be moving forward. And that's just kind of part of the scenario.
I wouldn't mind hearing Steve's opinion on this.
You haven't heard enough of my opinion.
just on the specifics of this topic as far as the timing to move ahead or when.
I'm comfortable with the board's decision to table this and see how things progress with the start of next school year. That would allow us to build things throughout the next school year. I can still be having conversations with the University of Dayton on the Leadership Excellence Program and how that could still pair with this. I'm still exploring pre-apprenticeship options as well through Sinclair and Edison and partnering with other businesses throughout the community. So there are things in the work, but obviously we've got a crisis on hand that we need to deal with first.
So it sounds like we're tabling it.
Yeah, and if I understood, that would be for 2 to 3 months. So I'll make sure that we pass this along. Essentially, if a decision is made, even after Mr. Stefanik's here, maybe that's an important piece, because I know that there is the aspect of making sure that the leadership is supportive of it. So we can take a look at that, and we'll definitely push it out for the next couple months and kind of see where we are on the health-related situation in our community and nation. All right, our next item was, if we're finished with that discussion.
We're good.
Okay, our next item is the Meyer Distribution Center, and it's just an update. And Mr. Stevens, I'm not for sure, or who was wanting to discuss this once again.
I can do that. That's not a problem.
I don't know. I didn't have anything to say about it.
No, I was just going to say that after the March 16th meeting, we had asked the city to make some changes to the proposed resolution and come back and talk and just provide us an updated document. I've spoken with the city manager, and he stated that the city is just going to wait out the waiting period. They're not going to look to do a waiver to waive the waiting period anymore. So they're just going to wait until the time period is up that they can move forward with Meyer and the construction. So, yep, nothing further to do on that. That's all I had on that.
It's noticed sometime in January, is that right?
I think January 31st is when it indicated that they had sent a notice to
Hand delivered. Yeah, January 31st, they said they hand delivered a letter. Correct.
Okay.
To the Board of Education,
Correct.
which I never received. And
Right. It was hand delivered to somebody at the board office, but they said it was hand delivered to me, which was not correct. And
Right.
the official contract said it was hand delivered to the 31st to the entire board. There were a lot of discrepancies, Simon.
And
Well, I think
I'm sorry, Simon, go ahead.
after you, Mr. Core.
Thank you. I just wanted to be clear because there were some comments after our March 16 meeting, and I didn't motion to sign the resolution as none of us did, simply because, and it just boiled down to one thing and one thing only for me. The dates that I was asking to acknowledge were just not correct. And I didn't feel it was appropriate or even legal for me to attest my name to something that I knew the dates were not correct for me. So that's why I didn't. That's all it was for me. Nothing else. I'm for economic development. I'm just not going to put my name on a document when I know the dates are inaccurate.
Now, did we ever, Dr. Kumpf,
Yes.
follow-up question, forgive me. Did we ever figure out whether it was hand delivered to the board office?
Yes, it was walked over to the board office, and it was provided to Mrs. Paul's desk. It was provided there. And I want to say that there may have been an agenda review or something that was occurring either that afternoon or the day after that, that's when it was provided to Mrs. Dunaway.
So we
And-
do know that they effectuated service to the board office on January, what was it?
31st.
31st. Okay.
Yes, I believe that is accurate.
So I guess from a housekeeping matter, I guess if there's no harm in us recognizing, just for the record, that on January 31st, a letter was hand delivered to the attention of the Board of Education to the board office. Is that fair?
Yeah, so it was, my understanding, it was delivered to Mrs. Dunaway, but I don't know, when I look
No,
at it.
it was delivered to Carrie Pearl. It was delivered to Carrie Pearl, and then when I came into the board office for a meeting a few days later, I received it.
Right.
I don't know why they didn't just give it to me, or call me, or my name was on it.
Why didn't they just
It's not
email
delivered
it?
to me.
I
No,
don't
it
get it.
was hand delivered to the board office to the
Correct,
attention of Teresa Dunaway,
Yes.
correct.
president, at the board
Correct.
office. And the date of delivery to the office, not to Ms. Dunaway, was January 31st,
That
correct?
I don't know, because I wasn't there.
That's to my recollection, and actually Mrs. Prawl would absolutely be the person to verify that.
Pulling up my calendar.
But you see, wait a minute, there was another document generated by Mr. Spring, and it was dated February the 13th and of 2020. And it was addressed to the Board of Education. There was no stamp of confidentiality on it. And that I never received that. I never even saw it until the Friday before our March 16 board meeting. And I
Right, we-
believe that was
Sorry.
referenced in that resolution.
Simon, are there any other questions that you have? Because we went over all this at the last board meeting.
I know you went over that at the last board meeting. I wasn't there, that's why I'm asking the questions.
Well, yeah, no, that's what I said. I didn't last board meeting, but I didn't
so
want to
the-
unanswer your questions, so. you
The
know,
correspondence, and you're referring to in February is a different
I'm
correspondence,
gonna
right?
grab my papers.
Yes, if I'm correct, the header that Mrs. of course talking about was on the same document or something of that nature that said February 13th on it. And I know that the dates were carefully looked at and there were questions about them at the last meeting.
I
And
have it. I just pull up my contract if we need it. I have it in my briefcase.
I'm pulling it up right now,
Yeah.
what was presented to us.
I don't need the waiver, I just making
Yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry, Simon. If you have a,
clarification, I guess, is that, and the correspondence you're referring to, the February date is a different document than the one that was,
correct, yes. To answer the question, you're right.
all right, then that's it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, two separate correspondences, Simon, if that helps answer your question. January 31st, and I believe February 13ish or something like that. I don't have it in front of me.
Teresa,
February 4th, go ahead.
did someone direct you not to share it with us?
Which document, Joellen?
The resolution from the 31st?
Yes, we went over that at the board meeting.
Yeah,
Clarifying.
that's why I said I didn't think it was fair, the position they put our president in.
Yeah, they told Dr. Kumpf and myself that it was absolutely positively confidential. And if anybody found out, Meyer could lose their, Dr. Kumpf, was it called a grant or some kind of?
there was a grant and it's, I believe the grant was connected to the aspect of extending a roadway. And that was important, that they did not want to jeopardize that particular grant. was my
And to
understanding.
for Mr. Patri's benefits, he wasn't at the meeting. You see, what was weird to me is that there was nothing marked on this correspondence as confidential. And it was to the Board of Education, not to the BOE president. And even if that was a confidential document, why would a president, as a matter of, parliamentary procedure or law, why would the president only receive that as a confidential piece? Because she can act individually anyway. The board's the board. So I just found the whole thing strange.
Any other comments? Any other discussion?
I make one comment.
Sure.
Few comments about me not being at the board meeting last time. I'd like to apologize for not being there. The reason I did not go is because I had a sore throat And I wasn't sure if it was the start of a symptoms related to COVID-19. I felt it was more responsible not to attend the board meeting than would be to go into tight quarters with you guys and expose you potentially to COVID-19.
Thank you for that.
I thought I emailed that to you before the meeting, but I guess I may not have done that.
I think that came through just close to the beginning of the meeting time. I think we probably were bringing the board agenda up on board stocks and did not see that, Mr. Patrick. Sorry.
No, it's my fault. I probably should have thought to do it sooner.
Simon, we knew you weren't going to be there, but Dr. Kumpf and I didn't, I mean, it's your personal information. We didn't, do you know what I'm saying?
No, I'm with you. I'm just making sure
Sorry, I don't think
everybody understood that I wasn't just blowing off my duties here.
no, nobody's holding it against you or, I mean, gosh, I missed a meeting because I had a family vacation last summer or the summer before. It happens. I try not to, but I mean, you know, my family is important. Okay, anything else on Meyer? Anyone?
Mm-mm.
We good? Okay, so that takes us to upcoming meetings. The next work session meeting will take place on Tuesday. Well, that's today.
An hour ago.
Well, yeah, well, it was supposed to be, wow, we're an hour behind.
Oh, dear.
An additional, hang on, and now I'm popping up here. Sorry about that. Sorry, guys. Okay. An additional work session will take place on Tuesday, April 21st, 2020, beginning at 6 p.m. It says the middle school library, but obviously with the closing of schools till May 1st, it will be another telephonic meeting. There will be a public, we're not going to have a tour anymore either. We just need to update this whole thing. The next regular Board of Education meeting will take place on Monday, April 27th. It says the Board of Education, but it will be another online meeting just like today. And the location of board meetings along with the tour of the buildings is subject to revision, which obviously with the COVID-19, we're kind of experiencing that now. To the board members who are still on here, Dr. Kumpf, Dave Stevens, Liz, do we want to take like a 5-minute break if anybody wants to get a drink or anything like that and jump back on, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
the link for the next meeting is different than this meeting. So I would suggest we all log off after
Pick
we.
a time, like
adjourn.
7:15? Do we all want to jump back on at 7:15?
Sounds good.
That'd be fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, everyone. Okay.
We still need to motion and adjourn to.
Oh, sorry. I motion to adjourn.
I'll
I second.
Oh, I mean-
Dunaway, Dahl.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Dahl,
I think, oh, yes.
Heatherly,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Zakor.
Yes.
Okay, 7:15, we'll see everybody back. All right, now I have to figure out how to close out of this meeting. Oh, here we go. Beep.